9 minutes before 8, to a couple of headlines. They certainly get your attention. The Daily Express: zombie knife sellers face 2 years jail in crackdown. For the Times: menacing zombie knives face ban. Here with details on that is the Conservative MP and relevant Minister, Crime and Policing Minister Chris Philp, who joins me. The details behind those headlines, if you would, Minister. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm concerned that some of these knives that have absolutely no legitimate use whatsoever, double-edged machetes, zombie knives with jagged edges and so on, are being used to commit crime. They're being used to intimidate people in the course of muggings on the streets, and they're being used by gangs who are fighting each other. They're causing misery, and I think we should take them off our streets completely, which is why we're moving to ban them with today's announcement. What that means is the importation, the manufacture, the sale, the marketing and the possession in private of these knives will be illegal. And in addition to that, we're making sure that anyone that sells illegal knives, these ones or the ones that are banned already, will face a higher prison sentence.
OK. How are you going to stop purchases online?
Well, that's where the online safety bill currently going through Parliament comes in. What that online safety bill does is it says that for priority offences, and this sort of thing is included, as you would expect, as a priority offence, then online platforms like Amazon Marketplace will have to take proactive steps to prevent the sale of this kind of thing. And of course, any company that directly sells online will be subject to the usual ban on sale. So the online safety bill will give us a lot more power to stop illegal activity online, including the illegal sale of knives.
How long has the online safety bill been making its tortuous progress through Parliament, Minister?
Well, it's been a while, and in fact, about a year ago, I was the minister in DCMS responsible for it. So it has taken a while to go through Parliament, but it's in progress now, and will hopefully become law as soon as possible, because it'll obviously not only prevent the sale of illegal knives, it'll also protect children. But
why so long? You have your party enjoys considerable majority. What's taking so long?
Well, it's been quite a contentious piece of legislation. There were some provisions in there last year around, for example, speech that was legal but perceived as harmful that have now been, some people objected to that, possibly including you, I can't remember. Those have now been removed, and it's concentrating on protecting children and stopping illegal activity online.
So would you say those people are actually putting lives at risk, those who are seeking to oppose the progress of the bill?
Well, I think anyone who is holding it up any further is not helping anyone. But I'm not sure, to be fair to people in Parliament on both sides, I don't think anyone is trying to hold it up. It does command, the principles in the online safety bill do command widespread support in the Commons and in the Lords, although, of course, there are points of detail that will get debated. But the important thing we're talking about today is getting these dangerous knives banned. Violent crime has reduced by 38% since 2010, but we'd like to go further, and today's measures are part of that.
Well, it's interesting you take us back to 2010, because I thought I'd heard these sort of promises before, and you may be aware that the Labour Party has published research that shows that every Home Secretary since 2010, bar Grant Shapps, who was there for a very brief time, has made the same announcement. It was Theresa May in 2016, Amber Rudd in 2017, Sajid Javid in 2018, and Priti Patel in 2021. And now I'm speaking to you as Crime and Policing Minister in 2023. We've had these promises before. Nothing has happened. Why on earth should my listeners believe a single word of this?
Well, that's not true. I mean, things have happened. We've been progressively tightening the law over the last few years. We've got amongst the, already, before even these changes, we've got amongst the toughest knife crime laws anywhere in the world. What these announcements are doing are taking it even further. There are some loopholes still. For example, some of the...
Minister, these zombie knives, as I believe they're called, are still out there, and we were promised they would be outlawed a number of years ago.
That's right. Well, the laws that were passed 2 or 3 years ago outlawed some zombie knives, but not all of them. And we're now going further to make sure that they're removed from circulation in their entirety. Over the last 3 years, quite an interesting statistic to measure what's really happening with knife crime is looking at hospital admissions where the person has an injury inflicted by a sharp object, typically a knife. And over the last 3 years, for people under 25, which is a cohort of significant concern, those have gone down by 24%. As I say, overall violent crime down by 38% since 2010. So this is all heading in the right direction, but there is some more to do, hence today's announcements.
Just lastly on this, some figures. The Times says last year there were 45,000 knife-related offences recorded. That's a 9% lift on the previous year and an increase of 33% compared with a decade ago. Those figures seem to be rather contrary to those that you're quoting. Who's right?
Yeah, so the figures that you're quoting from the Times are police recorded crime. And what we've seen over the last 10 or so years is the police getting a lot better at recording offences. Their compliance rate has gone from something like 70% to the high 90s. So those Times figures that you just read out are, I think, largely a reflection of the fact that police are doing a better job at recording offences. That's why the only data set for crime that's authorised or blessed by the Office for National Statistics is the Crime Survey of England and Wales, which shows violent crime reducing by 38% since 2010. And it's also why we look at those hospital figures, because, if someone's stabbed, they will pretty much definitely go to hospital. And that's why we look at those figures. And those are down by, as I say, 24% over the last 3 years. So definitely heading in the right direction, but more to do.
One tragedy that played out a year or so ago was in Newcastle. You may be aware of this. It's gone before Newcastle Crown Court, where the judges made a rare decision that the teenager involved, who was 14 at the time and is now 15, Leighton Ames, will be identified, which I don't need to tell you is obviously normally contrary. Do you support that? And what the judge hopes it will perhaps serve as a lesson to other teenage boys or either teenage girls. Do you support the judge's decision, and what do you hope it might bring about, Minister?
Well, I'm not familiar with the details of the case, but I completely respect the decision the judge made. Judges in this country are rightly independent and, like anyone, I hope, I accept their decisions. The judge clearly felt in this case strongly that the full facts of the case needed to be put into the public domain, which, as you say, is extremely unusual.
Almost
I hope the
unheard
message.
of, I think, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is almost unheard of. And I hope the message that this particular case sends to youngsters is don't get involved in gangs, don't get involved in knife crime, because it can lead to a terrible outcome, either if you become a victim in a fight or indeed if you become a perpetrator and then end up serving a long prison sentence. Just don't get involved in that kind of thing. There's a very clear message. It doesn't end well if you get involved in knife crime.
I don't need to tell you how successful in some areas the stop and search tactics have been in discovering knives on certain people. The tactic finds itself in the news again. Kemi Badenoch, one of your Conservative colleagues, says it's a vital tool, her words, in tackling violence. Do you concur?
Yes, I do. Kemi is absolutely right. Over the last 3 years, stop and search and similar tactics have taken, I think, 90,000 knives off the street. I was speaking to Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, about this a few weeks ago, and he told me that in London, right now, every month, between 350 and 400 knives are taken off the streets by stop and search. If you talk to the mothers of victims of knife crime, very often, tragically, from the black communities, those mothers will say they wish there'd been more stop and search happening when their sons, and it is typically young men who are the victims, when their sons were murdered, because had a stop and search happened, maybe the knife that killed their son would have been found. So Kemi is absolutely right. Stop and search does have a vital role to play, and because sadly young black men are disproportionately victims, they're more likely to be victims, it is that community who are protected ultimately by stop and search. Of course, it has to be done respectfully and carefully and recorded and all of those kind of things, but it is vital in taking knives off our streets. And that figure from London, 350 to 400 knives a month being taken off our streets, I think that is really important. And anyone who criticises stop and search needs to think very carefully about whether they really want those 400 knives a month to continue circulating on London streets, because I certainly don't.
Indeed. And lastly, Minister, how embarrassing was it on the day that the Prime Minister was talking about the importance of maths and urging that teenagers in their studies continued up to the age of 18, it might appear he might have had some issues with his own sums and a tax return.
A tax return?
The budget situation regarding conflict of interest regarding his wife and the childcare policy.
Yeah, so I think, when he was giving evidence to the liaison committee, he said at the time that he had made the proper declaration, and he wrote to them a few days later, I think on the 4th of April, to clarify that he's made his declaration in his submission to the Cabinet Office in his capacity as a minister, and he's happy to help the Commissioner with any further questions the Commissioner may have.
But he does find himself under some form of investigation now. Just what? It was in October that he promised that this would be an administration of integrity, Minister.
And I think it has been. I mean, no one seriously doubts Rishi Sunak's honesty and integrity. When issues arose, for example, with Nadeem Zahawi's tax affairs, he acted quickly and decisively to deal with that. I don't think anyone seriously thinks there's anything sinister here. I mean, the announcement he was making or discussing at the committee was putting more money into childcare, to give free childcare for people up to 4 years old and to get more people to train for childcare, something I think all of us can get behind. So I think it's pretty clear there's nothing sinister here. He did make his ministerial declaration to the Cabinet Office, and he'll help the Commissioner with whatever, the Standards Commissioner, with whatever inquiries the Standards Commissioner wants to make. But I think it is pretty clear there's nothing sinister here, really.
Grateful for your time. Croydon South Conservative MP, Crime and Policing Minister Chris Philp, appearing here on LBC, where it's 2 minutes after 8. Let's get the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This